Hello and welcome to the Friday, August 6, 2021 edition of On Iowa Politics. This week, Mathis and Franken are running and the Trump Presidential Library. Hi, I'm James Lynch of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. With me today are Amie Rivers of the Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier. Good morning, Amie.
Good morning, James.
And Gazette opinion editor Todd Dorman. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
You can find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to On Iowa Politics wherever you find your podcast. First up this morning, Mathis wants a new house. It seems that every time there has been an election in Iowa, there have been rumors that Democrat Liz Mathis was going to run governor, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, you name it. Earlier this summer, 1st District Democrats made plans to run advertising to attract a candidate in that race. Much to their delight and relief, Mathis finally said yes and is challenging Representative Ashley Hinson in the 20-county 1st District, which includes Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Waterloo, and Marshalltown. As we've talked about before, this pits former co-workers against each other. Mathis was an evening news anchor at KWWL and KCRG, both of which cover most of the 1st District, and Hinson was a morning anchor at KCRG. So they're both very well known by voters. They both sit in the Iowa legislature, both have ties to the business community. Although Hinson hasn't been bashful in her support of some of former President Donald Trump's policies, neither has aligned themselves with those extreme wings of their respective parties. Mathis, for example, endorsed Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar in the Iowa caucuses. So, Todd, what's this campaign going to be about? According to a late July Quinnipiac poll that asked if the election were today, would you want to see the Republican Party or Democratic Party win control of the House of Representatives? Voters were split. 45% said Democratic, 44% said Republican. So basically a toss-up. What will these candidates have to do to appeal to voters in the first?
Well, what's it about? It'll be about 6 months longer than we can tolerate. And it'll be about as expensive as you can imagine, and it will be about as nasty as past campaigns, and maybe even kicking it up a notch. I think I'd like to say it's going to be about issues, but we've seen in the past that usually doesn't work out so well. And I think we're going to see a lot of Liz Mathis and Nancy Pelosi together on our television screens, pitching, the dangerous radical socialism that will destroy America, and then maybe we'll see Ashley Hinson, with marauding Trump supporters at the insurrection in the background, that she failed to vote for a bipartisan investigation, and so I think they'll try to tie each other to the most controversial and worst elements of their parties, which is pretty standard. And, the things that Biden, obviously Hinson's going to hammer the immigration issue and say that, Liz Mathis won't secure the border, just like President Biden hasn't secured the border. And so, yeah, I imagine outside groups are going to begin spending, I think, you've already got an ad targeting Hinson on, what's the issue? I'm drawing a blank. She's
taxing millionaires or billionaires.
Taxing millionaires, that's right.
If you can go
fly
to the moon,
space.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, and we're going to see a lot more of that in the outside groups. I mean, Democrats are desperate to hold the House. They've got a narrow majority. This is a seat they think they might be able to flip. Republicans desperately want to grab the majority. They see this is a good hold, and Hinson is sort of a rising name in the party. She's, they're putting her out front at these, Capitol Steps press conferences and things, and she's going on Fox News. And so, yeah, it's going to be competitive and combative. And so, buckle up, I guess.
I can tell yeah, you're really looking forward to this, aren't you, Todd?
Well,
It's good that you've come back from vacation rested and optimistic and
my optimism, I left it somewhere in 2019 and I can't seem to remember where it is.
Amie, as Todd said, this is a seat that Democrats think they might be able to flip. I think the term you've used to describe the first district is swingy,
Yes.
from
We're
Braley to
swingers
Blum
here.
to, yeah, politically speaking, that is.
Hmm.
But we've gone from Braley to Blum to Finkenauer to Hinson. Voters there supported Barack Obama twice before swinging it down Trump twice. Um, and again, as Todd mentioned, Hinson is sort of a rising star in the Republican Party. Um, DCCC has said it's going to play offense in an effort to win back this seat. And Republicans wasted no time in going after Mathis for work she did to get a tax break for a project they tied to her husband's business. Given the trend line, what will it take for the DCCC and Mathis to swing the district their way?
I think probably, exactly what Todd's talking about, right? Like, so tie her to the more extreme things that she's been voting for and pushing for. I would think COVID's going to be a part of that too, especially she's, glommed onto the Republican line about vaccinations are encouraged and welcome, but don't mandate masks. And if school starts and we start seeing cases rise among kids, if we start having another bad fall and winter like we did in 2020 because of the Delta variant breaking through, I think you can easily tie that back to past statements, that Hinson has made along with other Republicans. Now, to Hinson's credit, she has all along been saying get the vaccine, but now that we're hearing this mask advice from the CDC as well, she has not obviously wanted that. She's taken the line of Governor Reynolds and other Republicans to do that, so that could be an issue as well for Mathis to hit on. But if it's going to be another sort of like, and it's already starting to be this, right? So Mathis is being positioned as like the elite, the power broker that gets money for, who she wants. If that's going to be who it is, and it's not, and she's not going to come out with any sort of progressive policies, this is kind of Hinson's race to lose, right? Unless you get a wild card, in the next year, you're starting to see like Hinson really pushing a policy that did not end up being popular, something else happening down the pipe. Um, but I think at this point, is it going to swing back to Mathis? I think the math right now is saying Hinson. It's really Hinson's race to lose. Not that Mathis can't. It's very close in polling, but right now Hinson has the edge.
Yeah, and both of these people, like I said, are well known across the district, and both are good communicators. Um, I think the other wild card, which we've talked about before, is redistricting. Depending on
Yes,
what the first district looks like,
exactly.
if the first district picks up a couple, rural counties in
Hmm.
northern Iowa, it could be much more attractive for Hinson. If, on the other hand, they lose some of those rural counties and it's more, Lynn, Blackhawk, Dubuque, um, that favors Mathis. And with both of these candidates coming from Lynn County, it's going to be, it'll be a real battle here, even more so than we saw in 2020 when you had both Finkenauer and Hinson in Lynn County.
I would
Um,
anticipate, if anything, the Republican majority legislators are going to give more rural counties, deep red counties to the first district. I wouldn't think that they'd want to make it even more, tilted toward Democrats, obviously, but who knows how it's
yeah,
going to all shake out.
and that remains to be seen how many Republican thumbs are put on the scales when it gets down to redistricting and drawing those lines. Uh, Legislators tend to worry about themselves first, and congressional districts um, after that. But yeah, if the Iowa redistricting plan goes according to uh, what it's supposed to do, the legislators really won't play a big role, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah,
And
But
if they don't get the numbers, they won't play. They may not play any role at all
yeah, exactly.
right.
by September 1st, right? Isn't that the deadline?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And supposedly the Census Bureau is going to release those numbers next week. I'm hearing that we won't see the legislative lines until maybe October.
Hmm.
I which the Legislative Services Agency seemed to think they would have uh, lines drawn before then. So I don't know what that means in terms of if Republicans are going to redraw those lines. But that's all very speculative at this point.
Yeah.
On a future edition.
On a future edition, exactly. Yes. In the meantime, let's talk about Michael Franken. The retired admiral surprised some people with a second place finish in the race for the Democratic nomination in the U.S. Senate race last year. So it's no surprise that he confirmed this week that he's planning to run again, this time for a shot to face Senator Chuck Grassley. Of course, that is if Chuck Grassley runs again. Um, there was an asterisk next to the confirmation. Franken said he's been dealing with a health issue apparently since the 2020 race and will run if he gets a green flag from his doctors. Todd, Franken seemed confident he's healthy enough to run, but that seems an auspicious start for someone who wants to challenge an 87-year-old guy who has been in office almost as long as Franken's been alive and who jogs and does push-ups to answer questions about whether he's fit enough to serve another 6 years. I also expect that Republicans will hit Franken for announcing that he's running while driving around in Washington, D.C. Should we expect more of the same, similar to the Hinson Mathis race here, or?
Well, Franken, yeah, the health issue is troubling. I mean, anytime someone is talking about something that may prevent them from running, that sounds kind of serious. So I hope you know that works out okay. Yeah, announcing on the while he was driving. I don't know if he was actually driving on the Beltway or inside the Beltway, or I don't know my Washington D.C. Interstate system very well, but I maybe Republicans will even be harder on him for taking a reporter's phone call. I mean, that's you don't do that, and then telling them something. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, here's it's was a pretty amazing moment. He's obviously not your normal politician. Uh, he's obviously an interesting candidate just because he's got that military record and he's been in charge of task forces and different things. He dealt with the Ebola outbreak. Uh, he commanded some military assets that went into to help with that. Uh, he's got some experience in the Senate where he was a sort of a military liaison, if that's the correct term for like Senator Ted Kennedy, and he's done some other a lot more work than you would expect in you know Capitol Hill politics for an admiral. So and he's not from Des Moines; he's from Northwest Iowa, and he's got a good backstory. So I think he's an interesting candidate. He's obviously not polished, uh, or else he wouldn't have announced while he was driving around. He's a little more polished than the time that Art Small ran and got some copier paper out of the copier at the back of the Capitol and wrote his announcement press release longhand and handed it out. So I mean, he's not that unpolished, but he, he's he's run once, but
Wow.
I mean, it was a virtual campaign. He didn't, we haven't seen him a lot out interacting with audiences and stuff. And God knows now with the Delta variant, maybe we won't get to see it this time. So it'll be interesting to see how his campaign sort of evolves.
Amy, this sets up quite a contrast among the Democratic Senate candidates. We have Dave Mulbauer, farmer and rancher from Western Iowa. Franken is 63 and spent his adult life in the military. Former First District Rep Abby Finkenauer will be 33 later this year, and her career has been in politics. Um, Iowa Democrats prefer an aggressive progressive who lost her bid for re-election, or the seasoned veteran, one of the seasoned veterans. Um, obviously Republicans will try to tie Finkenauer to AOC in the squad. Franken is sort of a policy wonk. What are Democrats going to do here?
Oh, and quick point, you missed the fourth candidate in the race. That would be Dr. Glenn Hurst, a member of the Minden City Council, of course.
Yes, that's sorry.
Just
No offense.
as much chance as the rest of them, of course. But yeah, okay, so let's set it up from last year when he did run for the Senate position. He ended up losing to Teresa Greenfield in a race that people said the DCC really put their thumb on, right? So who's going to say that that's not going to happen with Finkenauer? That could easily happen again with Finkenauer. She's the one that's won the seat before, or she's the one that's won a seat before. Basically, she's proven that she can get in there. So I really don't know. I mean, as much as Democrats have said, please, DCC, stay out of this a little bit and let us run our race because it's not really working when you come in. They're still going to come in because they've got all the money and they can help you run the ads and things like that. So their thumb is still going to be in the scale, and I don't know if that works out for Franken. It depends, though. Like, he's also got populist messages. He told Douglas Burns the other day, that there's an issue with corporate America lying prey on those less fortunate, and we need to legislate our way to a better future in that regard. So you could easily, tie him then to the squad just as well. Possibly it's easier with Abby Finkenauer being a woman, right? But you could make a case for Franken being, that out of touch progressive that doesn't listen to Iowa values too. So I think it'll be just a different race. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see that dynamic going back and forth. And I don't know who comes out better in that regard. I think, yes, he's got the military background. He's got the Western Iowa chops, but he still finished with 25% of the vote in the last Senate race. So I'm not really sure what would change necessarily in that short amount of time.
Yeah, the early indications seem to be that the Chuck Schumer and the DSCC aren't going to get as involved as they were last year in the choosing the candidate. I expect outside groups likely will get involved, and it'll be interesting to see how they align. You think about like Emily's list. Seems like natural that they would back Finkenauer. Whether there are groups out there that will jump on Franken's bandwagon and Mulbauer, I think remain to be seen. It's an interesting time. If you look at the results in Ohio the other night, it was sort of the mainstream candidate who won, not the progressive Democrat. And I don't know if Iowa and Ohio are often mistaken for each other. So not sure what we can extrapolate from that.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I don't think, if Grassley decides to run, which I expect he will, I mean, I don't know that the DSCC will play heavily in this race anyway.
Yeah.
Because it makes it a lot less winnable. And, you notice when Mathis got into the first district race, she was almost immediately endorsed by just about every Democrat in the state of Iowa, whereas, Abby and Franken, and I mean, you haven't seen a lot of people stepping forward at this point. I think Cindy Axney has endorsed.
I've heard that. Yes,
Abby Finkenauer or plans to. So, yeah. So I think everybody's kind of treating this race a little more carefully, and also Grassley is a tough out.
Yeah. Speaking of formidable, let's talk about the Donald Trump Presidential Library. It's interesting that plans for the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago are drawing opposition from locals who warn it. The development will encroach on city parkland, create traffic problems, and likely lead to gentrification of their neighborhood that will price them out of their homes. At the same time, former President Donald Trump is making no plans for a presidential library, perhaps because he believes those people who say he will be reinstated as president perhaps later this month. I think it's supposed to be in August, isn't it, that he's going to be reinstated? I'll have to look at the Constitution.
It's the latest prophecy.
Yeah. My thought is that the Trump Library could be housed in a room at Mar-a-Lago, big enough to house a TV, a remote, a phone, a comfortable chair, and a copy of The Art of the Deal to give it that authentic library feel. Todd, Amie, thoughts on the Trump library?
Well, if there ever is a Trump library, it will probably be a gilded Baroque nightmare.
Yep.
I mean, it's the guy's tastes are something to behold. But yeah, I imagine the one feature it will have for sure is a really, really strong wireless connection so that you can tweet all of
That's
its
right.
grandeur
Yes.
over and over again. And so it may be even in the shape of the Twitter bird. I don't know. Architects may get creative.
I envision a part casino, part steakhouse, with a gilded statue of the glorious leader in the middle.
There you go. Well,
with
if
fountains.
Yes, you have to have fountains.
And there'll be like a buffet. I mean, for casino buffet there, of course.
Yes.
McDonald's hamburgers like you
can't
gave to
have a
the
casino without
national
a buffet.
champions.
Yeah. And that's what he likes to eat,
Yeah.
Well, if any of that happens, we'll talk about it on a future edition of On Iowa Politics. And for those of you heading out to the state fair, wear sunscreen, be sure to stay hydrated, and report any Marjorie Taylor Greene sightings to podcast at thegazette.com. You can find us on the homepages of the Quad City Times, Sioux City Journal, Muscatine Journal, Mason City Globe Gazette, Waterloo-Cedar Falls Courier, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Lojo Russo will take us out. And if you know an Iowa band and musician who should be on our podcast, send us a sound file, and remember to subscribe to On Iowa Politics. For Amie, Todd, and our producer, Stephen, I'm James Lynch. Thanks for listening. Stay well.
Everything on? Are we recording? Sitting in my favorite corner cafe, drinking coffee and I'm daydreaming. Looking out the window, watching as the wind blows away. Listen to the singer singing softly about heartache and I'm thinking, which way does the sign show? Which way will my life go today? And the jasmine wind blows through my dreams, covers me in its warm caress. Sweet as honey, smooth as cream is my jasmine wind. Water clear and cold runs down the street beneath